responsible for block production, transaction validation, and consensus. That is going away, and we're moving towards kind of an Oracle model on another layer one chain.
See a few folks typing here, so I'm just waiting standby since we got about another 5 minutes allocated to this topic.
Also, my voice a little better now. I turned off noise suppression. That crisp thing just gets me every time.
Yep, I think I was guilty of that on the last call. All right, bye. I don't know if you're catching the latest. With staking moving from validators to VEHNT, has it been defined yet how the lockup term for HNT decays or can be adjusted?
Yeah, so that actually was defined in HIP 51, specifically the vote escrow. Definitely lots to read about this in HIP 51, but again, the short answer is the way that it's designed is that it's the longer you lock, the larger amount of votes that you get, and so that's sort of the short answer there.
Great, and I'm just working through the next one. Will burn downtime be eliminated for staking? I think this is actually already in the HIP, correct, By? As far as the
unbonding time? So staking, so unbonding in our current chain, if that's what this question is referring to, will be reduced. We actually proposed that we reduce it to 2 weeks. Right now, it's almost 5 months. And so a little more than 5 months. And so we wanted to reduce that. This is specifically for some validator providers who are pool operators. We wanted to make sure that they had a chance to sort of release their stake and return it to their pool member.
Yeah. And then still going through some of the questions here. This might be better for us to discuss more tomorrow as far as how the decision to support as far as the migration specifically Solana. So from Nike's Neeks, I don't know if I'm doing that correctly, but why Sol when it's such an exposed network many times of being hacked or well treasury strained? That might be better for, again, I don't know if you want to kind of touch on high level right now, if we wanted to talk about that more tomorrow in terms of the decision process.
Armand actually gave a perfect answer there, which is that particular attack that he's talking about, or that the member is talking about, is the slope attack, which was a particular wallet implementation. And but although that's troubling, right? Like that's not great. But it was a particular error in that wallet implementation.
Yeah, and that's definitely a topic we can dive into more tomorrow. Jorge or George, how you prefer to pronounce that? It seemed like the decision was supposed to be 1 year away. What's been its priority? From my perspective, and again, I think that some of the stuff is covered in the motivation behind the HIP. Like scalability has been an issue for the last several months. I think that Abai touched on some of these things around, some of the issues around proof of coverage and where we're seeing, network congestion. The idea of supporting, again, this is kind of our perspective from the foundation of supporting both the building of a blockchain and a global network for wireless connectivity. It's just a lot to cover off on, and the idea of I don't know if we had ever explicitly said anything about it being a year away. It's been in discussion since effectively we started talking about the idea of disparate networks last year with the original Freedom 5 proposal. But this has been something that's been in discussion, arguably, for almost a year at this point. But I think really the priority is around the fact of we really have to think about network scalability and driving use. So, Abai, I don't know if you want to add anything on top of that.
No, I think that's great.
All right, let's see here. Grin Grant, if I'm reading correctly, there will be a reward server / Oracle that authorizes minting tokens on Solana, correct? Am I reading it wrong?
That's So there's initially one oracle, and then our plan is to spread that out across multiple oracles. There'll be a future HIP that sort of describes how that would work, but we wanted to at least start with the one oracle.
Yeah, and that's actually something that as we build out the technical team at Foundation, which is something that we can address more in the near future, is how that we start to separate the responsibilities and duties between Foundation being more focused on blockchain consensus level issues. Again, how do we support multiple oracles where Nova is going to be more focused on things that are kind of application side. Let's see here. We only have about a minute
There's one
left.
question, or sort of there's one sort of implicit question in here around like has work gotten started, or like what's the progress, or what's our timeline. So I think one thing that I obviously believe that hips should come with code, especially when it's time to vote. And by the time this is ready for a vote, we'll have most of the implementation of oracles, we believe, ready to go. And certainly we're going to start, we're going to build this all in the open, of course. And so we think that the oracle things there, by the time it's ready for a vote. The Solana contract work, will be built and then needs to be audited, but of course it will also be open.
Yep. So again, I think there's some great questions in here. I want to make sure we can, yeah, again, there are questions around code. Let's, I think I addressed some of that, but I know that there was a little bit of cutout. Let's make sure, again, please submit all of these to the form that is within the blog. And I think it's also within the Discord announcement. Submit all those questions. We'll probably grab a lot of these off the chat right now, but let's make sure we drill into this tomorrow because I want to make sure we move through on the other areas of discussion for today. If we do have time at the end of the call, happy to come back to this if there is time available. But again, that's the point of the town hall tomorrow, is to cover off more of these issues in more depth, since we have at least an hour then. Moving on, we have, take a look, we've got Clarissa providing a grants update. So Clarissa, come on up and welcome to the stage.
Hey, thank you, Scott. So, a lot has happened since the last community call, and I'm excited to share a few updates as always. First, I wanted to give a big shout out to all the grantees who will be speaking at Helium House NYC on the 15th. The team from Nibia will be sharing how they built an AgTech IoT solution to improve tea farm management. Nick from Boise Brewers will be sharing the amazing work he's done to visualize asset management using Helium. And the team at IoT Off Grid will share how they worked with shareholders in upstate New York to build a completely open source hiker tracker. Tune in to the grantee panel to learn more about this notable community driven development. That's an exciting event. A grant we recently approved for funding is building LoRa signal-based positioning for Helium that aims to provide an open source component which allows indoor and outdoor positioning for IoT solutions based on Helium. It will use metrics like received signal strength indication, signal to noise ratio, and time of arrival with regression models and machine learning algorithms. The component allows community members to build cheaper, smaller, and ultra low power devices. So we're super excited about that grant. Another one that just got approval is for Jamie from Thunknado LLC. Just got approved to build a R4K field mapper. This project is designed to give people insight into the actual coverage of the Helium network and also provides real-time data while in the field. The device will send a beacon. Once this beacon is heard, it will gather all data and automatically queue up a downlink via whatever Helium console the device is on. So you'll see more info about this coming shortly, and we're super excited about that project. Quite a few grant projects completed significant milestones recently. The team building Helium Growth hit an exciting milestone for their grant project to visualize historical coverage and growth of the Helium network. I'll drop a link in the chat soon so you can take a look at the time lapse of your own city or of global coverage. It's pretty exciting to see this growth over time. And soon this time lapse will be speedier and more visualization tools will be available. So really excited to see that coming together. Also, we recently wrapped up a grant for CLI Wallet QR code export. This project aimed to implement a secure QR code export for the CLI wallet so that users can easily import their CLI wallets into the new mobile wallet app. This particular grant is interesting because it's an example of an independent developer contributing to the Helium codebase to solve a very specific problem. It's great to see that as an open source ecosystem, we're able to accelerate development by accepting code contributions from a broad community of talented programmers like Kelly. Last but not least, I wanted to give a big shout out to the team at HNT Scan who built HNT Scan from Hotspotty. They recently built this amazing project that aims to be an open source, lightweight Helium Explorer focused on providing value to the community without having to load any slow, heavy map information. So that's a super exciting project. I know a lot of people saw and celebrated that on Twitter, but I'll drop a link to that in the chat soon. And yeah, I think the last thing that I'll say is that we're working on some big things for the grant program and aiming to bring even more visibility to these great projects and what status they're in and who's working on them, all of that good information. And grant submissions will reopen after Helium House, so stay tuned. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone who has contributed to the grant program and helped support these community contributors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clarissa. Super excited to see a lot of the progress happen here. I'm particularly excited about HNT Scan and playing with that and all the other projects. Congratulations on hitting milestones. Excited to see that program reopening up in the fall. Thank you, Clarissa. Next up, we have Christina with an update around dual frequency plans. Welcome, Christina.
Hey everyone. Thanks, Scott. So just a quick update around the dual plan beta testing program that is for Australia. The local regulations allow both the AU 915 and the AS 923 gateways and devices to coexist in Australia. And the Nova engineering team created a hybrid plan in order to support both of these devices. There's been some internal testing that's happened, and we've had some makers reach out to us that are also doing this beta testing. If anybody's interested in helping out or wants to join it, they can email me and I will add my email to the community chat. But that is pretty much the very short update I have about that.
Short and sweet. Yeah, if there's any questions for Christina, feel free to pop that into the chat, but otherwise, pretty straightforward. All right, next up, John Mac 50. Do we have you on stage and available? John, are you with us? I'm looking, I don't see any request or John, if you're here, we can come back to you later in the interest of keeping things moving. But otherwise, Cryptosaurus, if you are ready to talk about the Founders NFT reward system, please join us up on stage. I think Cryptosaurus, I think you just need to request to join stage. There we go. And then.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk in this community call. I also want to thank to Ruben Deseli for the help on this process. And I think that this is the very first time that I talk to you. I will take a few seconds to introduce myself. My name is Ivan Lopez, born in Venezuela, living in Mexico since 20 years ago. I am engineer in digital electronic. I founded an engineering and industrial contractor company 18 years ago. Currently, I am the director of this company now with more than 30 team members. Currently, I am also the senior engineer in charge of the design of weather-based fire protection system and firearm systems. Um, I also have a YouTube channel where I try to teach the people in Spanish about some decentralized network, and I currently own and runs various nodes of some decentralized network. Okay, let's jump to this draft HIP. This has received some very big change since the first draft. What I want to start to say that this HIP proposed to open a wide dialogue in the most used and easy access platforms, not only Discord. Uh, I can see that now in this HIP, in the HIP that just presented yesterday, the 70, uh, you have included a Google form. I'm not sure if this is the first time that you included this form, but I really celebrate this because one of the big achievements of the Helium is to uh, is to that people with not as skilled as the people that can access to the Discord has decided to join this network and contribute in in some way. So I think that it's very important to bring this wide and easy access platform to hear what that people that not have the right skill to access to the Discord or to make a very technical proposal, but maybe out there we can find very good ideas. Okay. Um, Also, in this HIP, with this draft HIP, we want to discuss the need to find a way to 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 bring a complementary uh, incentive or reward. This incentive or reward may be temporary, uh, and the motivation behind this is that I can see that the hotspot that are currently offline is rising up, the number of hotspots that go offline. But not only this, also the percentage rate on the 30-day trend, I can see that is rising up. For example, in August 24, we have a 2.3 percentage on the last 30 days of hotspot going offline. But today we have 3.8. So this is have a concern to me. The real motivation behind this draft HIP is to have a fair chance to discuss with the community a way to keep the current size of the network. I really love the Helium project. I have dedicated many hours on my YouTube channel to talk about and the very big use case that this network have. But now I have a big concern to see the network reducing in size. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cryptosaurus. Looking to see if there are any questions on this HIP. It seems like I don't see anything at this point. Nothing at the moment. Yeah, I know this is still in draft form, so we will get this appropriately numbered and can open up some conversation around it. But right now it looks like no questions at the moment. So we can keep things moving today, but we'll get this numbered appropriately and named beyond, looks like it's still in template format, so we'll get that fixed and cleaned up and can get some discussion started on that. But thank you for joining us today. Let's see here. I think we have John Mack, I know that you are here. I'm just looking to see. Nope, I don't see any other thing unless, Ed, if you've got a question around the current HIP and... All right, we'll come back to that. Yep, I think we're good for now. Oh, we have a request from John. Nope, looking to see. John, do you want to come join us for your HIP discussion? Don't see him coming up here. Otherwise, oh, there we go.
Hey, how you doing?
All right. Thanks for joining us today, John.
Well, of course. Thanks for having me. So just wanted to give a little update on HIP 69. Initially, it was really very simply to just reduce the DC fee for reassertions from 1 million DC to 500,000 DC. And I figured, in its simplicity, it would just be a lot easier from a technical standpoint to just leave it at that. But then a lot of community managers advised that it would be better long term if it was more dynamic. And with the help with various community members, we have created this dynamic equation that will account for all the various factors that there is, whether it be the monthly rewards that's allocated to hotspots, the Oracle price, all the factors have been put into the equation. Also the daily average earnings per hotspot. So pretty much regardless of all these factors, the core goal of the HIP, which is to make the reassertion fee more more practical for people who are trying to move their hotspots into less saturated areas, is a lot more dynamic now. Additionally, obviously when it comes to something like this, like reducing a reassertion fee, there's definitely a few things that would be troublesome for most of us, which is, first of all, the economic impact. In other words, if you're reducing the fee to 500,000, that's a lot of DC less that's being burnt, which is not a positive. That's a negative impact on the economy. Though I think it was Waveform who actually pointed out that it actually might have a positive impact depending on how many people are reasserting. So for example, if you have a lot more people who are reasserting because after the reassertion fee is implemented, you end up having a lot more DC burned than you would have prior to. So we don't know yet whether it will have a positive or negative impact in terms of how much DC will end up being burned, as a result of the reassertion fee deduction. But that remains to be seen. And the second thing is the second core possible problem that will come out of reducing the reassertion fee would be gaming location spoofers, and that's why we implemented three, again with the help of community members. We implemented three gaming prevention methods, and that's basically to ensure that that spoofers aren't going to be able to take advantage of this. The first one being that you have to move your hotspot to a distance of at least 10 kilometers or more from the original location that's being changed. Now, the reason for that is, you don't want people who are moving their hotspots into a neighboring hex just to increase their TS scale. Obviously, the goal is not to help people gain the network. The goal is to help the network, expand. So that's why we implemented the first gaming prevention method, which is to ensure that there's a minimum of 10-kilometer distance. So obviously, anyone who's just trying to increase their TS scale, that wouldn't help them out. The second game prevention method is that in order to be eligible for the reassertion fee reduction, you have to be reasserting a hotspot into a Res 8 hex with less than 3, so 2, 1, or none, in order to be eligible. Obviously, the goal is to expand the network. So if you're inserting a hotspot into a hex with 40 or whatever, it's not gonna, it doesn't help the network. So that's why the second requirement to be eligible for to meet the criteria to be eligible for the reassertion fee reduction is that you have to reassert your hotspot into a Res 8 hex with less than 3 hotspots. And finally, the third gaming prevention method is that once a given hotspot receives its first reassertion fee reduction, it cannot have another reassertion fee reduction for 525,000 blocks, which comes out to approximately 1 year. So ultimately, even if, let's just say, location spoofers are somehow benefiting from this, regardless of the first two gaming prevention methods, still it limits the possibility to once per hotspot per 525,000 bucks, or approximately 1 year. So between these three gaming prevention methods, it definitely gives a strong case to argue that this reassertion fee reduction is not going to be helping spoofers, or at the very most, it will only be helping them once a year. And obviously, the goal is to help expand the network. So those who are moving their hotspots into less saturated areas, it's not that shouldn't harm them, right? Someone who's moving it shouldn't need to move it more than, someone who's honestly moving their hotspot shouldn't need to move it more than once a year to a less saturated area. So between the three gaming prevention methods and between the dynamic mathematical equation logic, also I should mention that we added if-then logic, meaning let's just say, because if you look at the equation, you plug in various different numbers, what happens when the oracle price theoretically would be $100 or $1, and it kind of goes, it goes all over the place in terms of what the price would cost. So we made the if-then logic that supersedes the equation, that should the equation result in a reassertion fee that's less than 100,000 DC, then the reassertion fee will equal 100,000 DC, meaning that it will never cost less than 100,000 DC or $1, and it will never be greater than 500,000 DC or $5. So this way, that's obviously very important, because the nature of the equation, depending on various factors, it could be without the if then, it could at times be less than $1, and it could be at times more than even $10, theoretically, more than the million DC that already is. So that's why we put the if then in there, just a case to prevent that from happening. So if this reassertion fee was actually implemented, then it would never be, it would still, I'm saying the equation of stage 2, then it would still never be less than 100,000 DC or greater than 500,000 DC. So between the gaming prevention methods, the equation, and the if-then logic, I think this definitely evolved tremendously with the help of the community members, and yeah, really excited to see where it goes.
Excellent, thank you, John. I'm looking at just some of the questions. Fee stays the same if it does not meet this criteria. I believe that's correct, right, John? Oh, we lost him from the stage. Hard to do Q&A that way. John, do you want to come back up, or otherwise we can kind of pop some of these in the channel and kind of address that there.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected. Was there any questions?
Yeah, I think there's just some points of clarification. So one was if the fee stays the same, if the criteria is not met. I believe that's a yes, but wanted to confirm.
Correct. So in other words, if the three gaming prevention methods, so meaning it has to be with at least 10 kilometers or greater that you're moving to, within a res 8 hex of less than 3 hotspots, and it had to have been either your first reassertion fee reduction or after 525,000 bucks. Now, if you don't meet all three of those criterias, then you will not have your reassertion fee reduced.
Got it. Let's see, I'm just kind of scanning through us. I think I'm the edge case in this because I just moved in less than 10-kilometer radius, so that rules me out. But I think that's not the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we just figured, what if we're reducing the fee? What happens to people who are just, they're not trying to expand the network; they're trying to increase their TS scale. So, in order to prevent that, that's why we said, a minimum of 10 kilometers.
And from Joey, could this be simplified by binding the assert fee to reward scale?
So in essence, it was. If you look at if you actually look at the GitHub, the HIP, or look in the pin messages, there was, or just within the messages of the community, actually just reposted the equation. But yeah, it does factor in everything. It factors in the reward scaling. It factors in what the average daily DC earned per hotspot is. So it's dynamic on that level as well. Yes.
Okay, looking to see if there's any other specific questions, some comments. I don't know if you want to address any of the comments there.
I've got one comment that might be worth for the community to think about. There's sort of two proposals here. One is to reduce the assertion fee down to $5, and the second one is to allow it to scale down even further based on sort of this dynamic pricing function that John and other members of the community put together. I think we should kind of probably treat them as two separate conversations. The one is, do we want as a network to reduce it to $5 worth of DC, and two, if we want to have this kind of dynamic pricing. We've had some ideas around dynamic pricing for assertions in the past. Things like how recent had you asserted, how dense is the area, like the kinds of things that John has like kind of considered here. Stuff that we've thought about. It's just tough to do that on chain. So I think implementing something like that phase 2 is actually more possible when we move that to kind of an Oracle model. And so if we were to do that, I would recommend that we wait until there, until that side of until we're on that side of HIP 70. But yeah, I think maybe the action here is to really kind of like decide on phase 1 and decide on phase 2 separately, just to sort of simplify it.
Yeah, so stage 1 is basically just, obviously stage 2 is going to require a bit more, quite a lot more technical work. So stage 1 was basically, let's just, through a chain var, let's just reduce the 1 million DC fee to 500,000, and then from there see if it actually makes a difference, meaning if people are actually moving to distances of 10 kilometers or greater within resident hexes of less than 3 hotspots, and if that is happening, if we do see that, hey, the core goal of the SIP is being realized, it is actually resulting in people expanding the network, then great, let's make that for stage 2. But if it's not, then what's the point of wasting all those resources to make that happen?
Great, good discussion around this. I do think that as far as I tend to agree with Abai that we probably would have to vote on these as separate issues because they are certainly distinct. So, John, we can chat on that and think about again if this is vote ready on either one of them. I think first one was obviously a lot more simple. Second one is just a matter of having that code ready, which I believe you have built into the HIP. So we should be able to move forward on that and bring those to a vote. Thank you. Any other? I'm just taking a look to see if there's any other questions around this.
Just to answer that question regarding GPS. GPS is very, very easily manipulated. I actually thought of that, went through that process in my head of maybe we should implement various things I discussed on the original community call when I first introduced HIP 69. I mentioned a few possible options. Maybe we should focus on GPS. Maybe we should force people to not, when they're onboarding for the first time, to not give them the option to set their location later. And those were all discussed, and we realized just logically, because GPS can be manipulated on various levels quite easily, and because there are various situations where it would be unfair or unreasonable to force people to assert their hotspots right away, we did not implement those factors.
Got it. I'm looking to see. I do think that for the most part, these would be ready to get to a vote separately, and just to get this out and get community opinion on these, because it seems like there's probably some divided opinion on it. But otherwise, let's keep that conversation going. Do we have an open HIP channel for this one? I think, John.
Yeah, we have a HIP 69 channel.
Yep. Great. All right. Excellent. Let's keep the discussion going on in there, and then I think we should be able to move that to a vote relatively soon.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you, John. And then next on our agenda, so this is not I'm going to bring up Gary for the discussion around IoT customer onboard experience, but I do just want to caveat, Gary, again, that we tend to focus this, aside from some updates from Foundation around grants or committees, tend to be focused on HIPs and governance. So curious about what the question or issue is here, and if it's something that we can discuss within the forum. Otherwise, it might be something that might be better off discussed within channel or separately offline. Yep, Gary, I think you might just need to get yourself up on stage or request to be added as a speaker. There we go. Gary, welcome to.
Oh, yes. Okay. Just figured that out for the first time. Okay. So part of the attraction of the Helium IoT network for developers has been that unlike TTN, you get a commercial friendly network with AWS like pricing, i.e. 100,000 packets per dollar without any minimums or monthly charges, and self-service sign up with just a credit card. That and 1 million hotspots is why I'm using it for our startup. That's how it was right up until this 10 device maximum on the default console, which came in a couple of months ago. The current situation is a bit of a mess that will dramatically reduce actual new paying users of the network. Anyone in e-commerce would tell you that every step, every delay, every decision, every bit of complexity you add to the buying process will cost you in sales. Before, you could build a startup with just a credit card on the default console with no limitations, and you could scale smoothly from one to thousands of devices. Now you might start building on the foundation console, but you can't stay there, and devices don't smoothly easily transition to another console. See router issue 826. Next, you have three real options. You either use Helium IoT Europe for 100,000 packets per €5, a 5x cost increase. Number two, you can use Nova Console for the standard DC price after an email and sales consultation where they might want you to get to 1,000 devices and talk about partnership. Not a simple process, and they might reject you, and no details are publicly available. Number three is to self-host, which means buying an OUI for $900, exposing your business to crypto to burn HNT for DC, paying for hosting, having system admin set up and maintenance, paying for state channels and device insertion. And this is only fully described in Disc 91's article, which has a lot of issues, which I have spoken to some privately about. So does the Helium team consider the current situation adequate? Is there a plan for improving this? And is Nova Console a long-term option for everyone, or is it just a stopgap measure?
I think we got, Cyborg. Thank you. I was hoping you were going to jump in here and talk a little bit about console router.
Yeah, no problem. And thank you for, I'm not sure how to pronounce the Discord name, Gaz McGee.
Gaz McGee.
Yeah, Gaz McGee. Thank you for raising that. So this was a decision that we made back in March with the foundation, and if you remember back then, there's a number of changes. DUI was changing to Helium Foundation, Helium was changing to Nova Labs, and the idea of transitioning console to Helium Foundation was to allow that console to be focused on educational purposes or getting people to try out the network, but not doing it for commercial purposes because they are a nonprofit. They're not set up to support and provide those type of services to companies. It was really an opportunity to provide to the community, hey, here's the console that you guys can try the network. It is real. You've got coverage in your area. And that was the purpose. And then in the background, we were looking to basically, from a usage perspective, rather than just Helium providing this console, we wanted to get other partners in the ecosystem involved and engaged. And this was started with a couple partners. We had worked with some other ones, but what we realized was, the architecture and what we were building, or what the foundation that we had set wasn't strong enough. And so part of this shift to this new architecture is really allowing the partner ecosystem to build a foundation of providing other options that we feel is going to make the community provide more access to the community and more usage, because ultimately we don't want to be the only ones providing this single on ramp to the Helium network. If you think about what happened with HIP-19 and when Helium was first starting, and we were the only ones providing hotspots. It wasn't great, and the network only really took off once HIP-19 was implemented and a bunch of other manufacturers jumped on board, and then Helium actually stopped producing hotspots. Kind of a similar thing with validators. With validators, providing and hosting validator isn't easy, and so a number of providers popped out of the ecosystem to provide that service. And so that is the goal that we are marching towards, and why we're focused so much on this new architecture that we feel will really provide this foundation for partners in the ecosystem to pop up, not just Tiny One, but others, and to provide the services, provide competition within the ecosystem. Um, so that is the intent and the goal.
That sounds like a direction rather than a goal. A goal has a date and outcomes. What we have now.
So the goal for us is to build that new architecture. We're marching toward a date for starting to get external beta customers by Q4. So that will be our goal.
And is the pricing going to be, like 5 times as much?
The pricing will be determined by providers in the market who are providing these services. We don't want to control the pricing, right?
Well, if you do nothing and the only option is 5 times, it's going to kill the market, because for that price I can get NB-IoT or
so yeah, I mean, so if providers are trying to charge 5 times and other providers see that and they charge less and provide better service, that's great. That's what we want to see.
So that's a bumpy road. Can we rely on the Nova console for the time being, or is that just going to like drop off one day?
So when you say rely on the Nova console, which Nova console specifically? Because there's two. There's one that's being hosted by the foundation, and there's the VIP Nova console.
Well, obviously the second. The first one is the foundation. The second is Nova itself. I mean, I'm on it now, but is that going to be pulled? Like, see, all this uncertainty and lack of information, lack of marketing, just creates a lot of impediment to actually using the network.
So the direction will be that we want partners in the ecosystem to provide these services and not Nova.
I understand that,
that's what we're focused on.
but you need to bootstrap the market.
Yep, understood. And we have, Scott, I don't want to take up too much time. We have a town hall meeting tomorrow where we specifically talk about HIP 70. That might be better to get into more details. We're also planning to publish a blog to provide more details about what we're, both the direction and the goals.
Yeah, well, it does make it worse. You need to recognize that the situation in the near future is looking worse for console users than it has been up to now.
Well, actually, we think with the new architecture that we're building out, that's going to make things better.
Ultimately,
so that's one of the big things about this HIP is we're pretty excited. This new architecture is going to allow us to improve both the speed, the reliability, and the scalability of this network. So this is exciting times for us.
So one thing I'll jump in, just to, I can't give exact numbers from our side, but one of the things that we're looking to support from the foundation side is, again, bootstrapping more entities that can run console services, at least for some initial providers, separate from what Nova's been doing. Again, the purpose of Foundation console is a lot more for for grantees, for academic and research purposes. So Gary, I completely hear you about the device limit on that not being sustainable. But as far as bootstrapping more organizations where we can provide some support from our side, I can't promise exactly what that's going to look like, but suffice to say for now that we're certainly going to put ourselves out there as as a source of at least some an initial support just to get some of these things off the ground and have additional scalable providers beyond Nova.
Yeah, but behind this, I wonder if the problem is that 100,000 packets per dollar just isn't enough money. And I think we need to look at ways where we can charge more. For example, packets that are received in remote areas could legitimately charge more for reception. And also, I think we need to maintain that sort of AWS sign up customer experience somehow. The one in Europe's no good to me. I'm on the other side of the world. I would like to have an onshore option, but self-hosting is a big pain too. So, if I could pay double or triple their 100K per packets, that might be all right.
Yeah, I think that, Gary, I'm happy to chat about this separately in terms of where we can either provide support for something that is, more local to your area, or figuring out, again, ways that we can, bootstrap something. But, I want to make sure if we need to get back to any discussions around kind of governance and tips. I'm not trying to squash or censor anything here. I just think that might be, since this is around like more commercial interests and having other console providers, I think we just need to figure out some sort of plan, potentially working with Nova on how we can get more services stood up, especially to support different geographic areas, especially where you are.
And what we don't want is a model that doesn't make sense till you have 1,000 devices. That kills innovation. It kills startups and small things that grow.
No, happy to figure out again what is the scale approach for something that is again thinking about all the folks in the community here, from whether it's hobbyist work, experimentation, small businesses, medium, then obviously supporting everything at kind of larger industrial or enterprise level. So happy to chat more on that and figure where we can support from the foundation side. Since again, while we are 5G and mobile is a very big topic of discussion, I want everybody in the community to be rest assured that Foundation is continuing to support both networks, just the growth of the overall Helium network, regardless of which wireless standard we're talking about. So we are not taking our eyes off the ball with all things LoRaWAN from the Foundation side.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be in any other conversations, but and thanks for everyone's time. I know we're not going to solve it in 15 minutes here.
Yeah, certainly. No, happy to continue the chat and get a few other folks from Foundation involved to figure out how we can support you then.
Okay. Yeah, and I just want to say that one of the, again, just going back to HIP 70, one of the big initiatives for HIP 70 is building out this new architecture that will, as we say, we feel massively improve the reliability and service of data transfer. So this is still very much a focus for us.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you, Gary, for bringing up the issue, and Dal, thank you for joining and giving a little bit of the Nova perspective on this. But appreciate the comments by all.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. I don't know if we still have. I think we might have lost a bio. I think he was in transit. Let me take a look here at our agenda. I think we've actually covered everything that was on our agenda for today. Yeah, we managed to get through it all in a bit of spare time. I think that what's probably going to be best, again, for the sake of, unless there's anybody else from the core development team that want to speak to anything around HIP 70, it's probably best to reserve all of those questions for tomorrow, since we'll have more folks that can contribute to that discussion, dive in into the implementation details. So please, again, just a reminder to folks, submit your questions in the forum. That is at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 Eastern, and a little bit later on the European side. I think that is 10. Unfortunately, we cannot get that done earlier in the day. I know we always try to account for multiple time zones. So otherwise, I'm doing a quick scan to see if there's anything else as far as specific questions, anything else for agenda. Looks like a lot of conversation that we can either take back to channel or bring to tomorrow's town hall. So on that note, I think we're going to be able to close up on the earlier side today. So thank you everybody for all the questions, contributions. Excited for tomorrow, so look forward to seeing everybody then. But thank you for joining for the monthly call for August. And unfortunately, no video, so we can't wave goodbye. But thank you everybody for making the time. Have a great rest of your day or evening.